You put on the ring. You say the vows. You kiss in front of everyone you love. It feels like the most personal moment of your life, but it isn't. Not really. For most of human history, your wedding wouldn't have been about you at all. It would have been about land, about debt, about which family owed which family a favor. The real answer to why weddings look the way they do is far stranger than romance. Start with the ring itself. You slide it onto a finger and call it a symbol of love. But for thousands of years, a ring wasn't a symbol of anything soft. It was a receipt. In ancient Rome, a betrothal ring functioned as a legal marker of ownership, much like a brand on livestock. The woman wearing it wasn't just promised, she was claimed. Doesn't that change how the gesture feels? Now think about the vows. Till death do us part sounds poetic. It sounds like devotion stretched across a lifetime. But historian Stephanie Coontz, who has spent decades studying the evolution of marriage, has shown that for most of recorded history, marriage functioned less like a romantic bond and more like a binding contract between families, tribes, and economic units. Love wasn't the requirement. Stability was. A marriage that ended meant broken alliances, disputed land, and unpaid debts. The vow wasn't a promise of the heart, it was a warning label. Here's where it gets stranger. The anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss argued that marriage across early human societies functioned as a system of exchange, not of gifts, of people. Women, in particular, were moved between family groups to create alliances between them. A marriage wasn't two people falling in love and deciding to build a life. It was two groups deciding to stop being strangers, or stop being enemies, using a person as the mechanism. You weren't marrying a partner, you were marrying a treaty. Why does that matter now? Because you still perform the leftover rituals of that system without knowing what they meant. When a father gives away the bride, you clap. You cry even. But that phrase used to mean exactly what it sounds like. A transfer of legal custody, from one man's household to another's. The woman had no vote in the transaction. She was the transaction. Think about the dowry. In cultures around the world, a bride's family paid the groom's family to take her off their hands, or the groom's family paid the bride's family to compensate for the labor and children she would now provide elsewhere. Either direction, the logic was the same. Marriage moved value. It didn't create it out of love, it redistributed what already existed. So, when did love even enter the picture? Later than you'd think. Evolutionary anthropologist Helen Fisher, who has studied pair bonding across cultures for decades, has pointed out that romantic love as the primary reason for marriage is a relatively recent cultural development, gaining traction mostly in the last few centuries in Western societies. For most of human history, romantic attraction was seen as something that might happen after marriage, if you were lucky, not something that justified it beforehand. Falling in love before the wedding wasn't the goal. It was sometimes seen as a liability, a feeling too unstable to build an alliance on. Picture a village 1,000 years ago. Two families need an alliance to survive a harsh winter, share grazing land, or end a blood feud. A marriage is arranged. Two teenagers who may have met only once are bound together, not because they chose each other, but because their union solves a problem neither of them created. Their wedding day isn't a celebration of romance. It's a ceremony of debt settled and peace secured. And everyone in that village understands this. No one whispers that it's sad. It's simply how survival works. Now, walk that logic forward. Royal marriages across history were rarely about affection. They were treaties with vows attached. A king married a foreign princess, not because he adored her, but because doing so prevented a war. Entire empires were stitched together, generation after generation, using weddings as the thread. The wedding night wasn't private. In many royal courts, it was witnessed, sometimes literally, to confirm the alliance had been physically sealed. Nothing about it belonged to the couple. It belonged to the states involved. Even the guest list has ancient control baked into it. Why do you invite extended family, business contacts, and people you barely speak to anymore? Because for most of history, a wedding wasn't a private party. It was a public announcement of a new social contract, and the community needed to witness it to enforce it. If a dispute ever arose later, over land, over a broken promise, over legitimacy of children, witnesses mattered. Your guest list today is a fossil of a legal safeguard. Does any of this mean love wasn't real for ancient couples? Not necessarily. Affection likely grew inside many of these arranged uni,